Hey, this is Matthew, the pastor of Acts Church in East London. You're listening to The Script, the message podcast from our church. Each week we dip into the Word and see how we can live richer, fuller lives and become the people that God wants us to be. We hope this message encourages you. Be blessed. Genesis chapter 1, verses 1 and 2. This is a very well-known piece of scripture. These are the very first words and very first sentences in the Bible. Kind of more than that, these are the first sentiments, the first ideas and concepts that we find in the Bible. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters. This is taken from the New International Version. I think it's an iteration of this particular passage that many of us will be familiar with. I'm going to read it again. And this time I'm going to read it, and it will be on the screen again. This time I'm going to read it from the New Revised Standard Version. Now, this is the version that I usually use in my personal study. This is the version that I also tend to use my biblical references from when I'm preaching. It says, "In the beginning, when God created the heavens and the earth was a formless void, and darkness covered the face of the deep, while a wind from God swept over the face of the waters." Did you notice anything different in those two readings? Okay. There are a number of small differences as to be expected, but perhaps the biggest difference is contained within the last clause. So first of all, we heard the Spirit of God was hovering over the waters, right? And then we heard that a wind from God swept over the face of the waters. Now, before anybody gets unduly alarmed or concerned, and I can understand why you might be perking up. Please don't worry. This is a perfectly acceptable variance that we see expressed in these two different versions. Now, Bible scholars among us, or I like how Steve George put it, Bible geeks among us, he said, I like that. Bible geeks among us might be aware, and if you're not, then hopefully I can inform you now. In Hebrew, which is the original language that the Old Testament text was written in Hebrew, the same word is used and is translated into English to mean spirit and wind. That word is ruach. That word is ruach. So in Hebrew, the word ruach can be translated both as spirit and as wind. And so Bible translation committees, they use the breadth and depth of their experience, of their knowledge, to pore over literally every single word in the texts that they have in the original languages, and they then decide which English word best represents what they think the original author was trying to say. Now, we can only say what they think the original author was trying to say. You can't know what's in somebody's head, but they use their broad experience to try and to represent what English word best represents what the original author was trying to say. That's why you get variations such as this one. There is another word that ruach can be translated as, and it's not a word that you will generally find in any English translation of this particular passage. You won't find it in any biblical translation. So what that means is that contextually, nobody thought that the English word that I'm speaking about best represented the essence of what the author was trying to say. So nobody's used that. But I do want to say the word that I'm thinking of that I'm going to share with you, it is the third most common translation of ruach in the Old Testament. So the first English word that is most commonly translated from ruach is spirit. The second word most commonly translated is wind. And then you have this word, which is the third. So it's on the podium. It's like in the bronze medal position, okay? And it's actually a word that I think quite beautifully enmeshes the meaning of spirit and the meaning of wind. And that word is breath. And so let me take a little creative liberty of reading the text again, but with a different translation of that same Hebrew word. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness was over the surface of the deep, and the breath of God was hovering over the water. That makes God sound very, very close, doesn't it? How you react when you feel and hear somebody else's breath very much depends on who that person in question is. We can be real. In some instances, that might actually mean that the person is violating your personal space, depending on the person. But as a child, hearing your parents breathing, like steady and consistent, especially in the night when it's dark, it's actually quite a comforting thing. Like as a married person, sometimes you might be lying there, either you've woken up or you couldn't get to sleep properly because you're stressed, whatever it might be, and you might be lying there and you hear your spouse breathing, not snoring, breathing. And it's comforting because it's a reminder, even in the dead of night, even when there's darkness all around, that someone is there. When you have a child and they're newborn and you lay them down to sleep and you find yourself becoming that cliche because they're sleeping and now you're literally asking that thing that you've heard all parents ask, like, are they okay? Is everything all right? They're not moving. They're not doing a lot. Are they okay? And then you hear them breathing. Because they breathe quite shallow. And in that moment, everything is right with the world and nothing else matters. So imagine if during your darkest night, if during your bleakest season, imagine if during that time that you're walking through the valley of the shadow of death, you close your eyes and you can hear the breath of God next to you. Not the intangible, like nebulous nature of the Spirit of God, not the force and the power of a wind from God, but the quiet rhythm and closeness and consistency of the breath of God. Yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for thou art with me. So Adrian and Daryl, they think they're tough guys. One of the reasons that they think they're tough guys is because after every single shower, they turn off the hot water and they finish with a minute of cold. Okay. I know this because they've told me, not because I'm there, obviously. But they have reported this to me. And I know they've been doing this for a long time. How long have you been doing that for, Age? A year. Age would do it for a year. Daryl about the same kind of time. I wanted to be a tough guy. But I didn't want to do that. See, my grandfathers, as for some of your grandfathers or fathers, but my grandfathers had to go to the public baths, once or twice a week in order to have a hot shower. Like hot running water wasn't always a thing that people had. They had to go to the public baths in order to have a hot shower. They worked too hard and gave too much for me to be voluntarily out here having cold showers. That would be like dishonoring their legacy. So I resisted. But I really wanted to be in the tough guy crew. I really wanted to be like these guys. And so I decided I was going to have to suck it up and give it a try. And so I thought, let me start with 10 seconds and build up. Now, I don't know if you know this. Time actually stands still inside a cold shower. Like, in some respects, it actually moves backwards, I think it's been found. And so the day that I tried this, I said to myself, okay, there's no point like slowly turning the hot. You just got to go straight into it. You just got to go hard. And so I'm in the shower, turn the hot straight off. When totally cold, I started counting to the 10. I kid you not. By the time I got to about 6 seconds, my body involuntarily tried to fold in half. Like literally, there was like a shock reflex. I was like, what's that? I nearly fell down. And I think I managed to push through to 10 seconds, but I don't know if that was conventional Earth time or not, if I'm honest, because it was all like a bit of a blur. Now, I have to say, as soon as the cold water stopped, immediately I felt amazing. It happened even quicker than I expected it to, because I'd heard about these benefits. It was literally like, boom. I just felt like incredible. But in spite of that, I wasn't sure if I was going to be able to do this again. I'll be honest, it's really, really horrible. But I decided you can't bail on something after one day. I didn't want to be that guy who says, well, I tried it once and then I never did it again. I thought, I don't want to be that guy. I want to be someone that can kind of try and stick with something. So the next day, I decided I was going to try again, but I needed a strategy because I couldn't just be folding up in the shower again. I couldn't have my kids coming in and be like, what happened to daddy? Like, why is it? I'm not going to be that guy at all. So I thought, I have to come up with some kind of strategy. And so I came up with a really simple one. Breathe. Inhale 1, exhale 2. Inhale 3, exhale 4. And so I put this strategy into place and this time I was able to do 15 seconds. So that's like a 50% increase. Pain management. Self-control. The next day, 20 seconds. Calm down. Focus. Slow everything down. Block everything out. And you're done. 1 month later, I'm still going. I haven't had a shower that didn't end in cold. Admittedly, I've only had 3 showers since then. But nah. And I'm up to between 30 and 40 seconds. I think I've turned enough of a corner now I can say it's 40 seconds. I've moved from 30 to 40 seconds. It is something I find extremely difficult. I'm not out here trying to say it's an easy thing. It is extremely difficult. Every single day when I think about having to have a shower, there's a little bit of dread in me, like I'm going to have to do it again. I'll just be real with you. It's something that I find super, super difficult. But the discipline of breathing has enabled me to stick with it and to enjoy the benefits. And I undoubtedly would have given it up and chucked in the towel without implementing that. Breathing has changed the game for me.
Before we continue, we'd love to invite you to Bold, Beyond Our Limited Dreams, our upcoming week of prayer at Axe Church. It's a dedicated time to slow down, seek God intentionally, and pray with courage and expectancy, together. Whether you're new to prayer or have been walking with God for years, Bold is a space to come as you are and press in a little deeper. You can find all the details at weareaxe.co.uk or on Instagram at weareaxechurch. Now, let's get back into the message.
Now, let me clarify what we mean when we speak about breathing in this context, because breathing is something that you are doing literally all of the time. Everybody is breathing all the time without even thinking about it. And so let's just set a couple of parameters so we understand what we're talking about here. By way of an example, not eating is not the same as fasting, even though fasting is not eating. They may look the same, but one of those things can happen passively and incidentally. The other is a spiritual discipline. By the same token, involuntary inhaling and exhaling is not the same as conscious breathing. They may look the same, but one of those things is going to happen whether you like it or not. But when you combine conscious, intentional breathing with the solicited presence of God, you now have a spiritual discipline. It is a gift and a blessing that the thing that we do more naturally than any other thing, breathing, is also a tool that can be used in managing our experience in life. And so let me just take one moment to address I don't know if this elephant has creeped into the room, but just in case there is an elephant that's creeped into the room without anybody noticing, I just want to address it. Breathing as a practice is something that has been embraced by elements of Eastern mysticism for hundreds, thousands of years, something that's been embraced in more modern times by New Age. And so what that can mean, sometimes people within our environment and within our context can think that the idea of pausing and focusing on your breathing is a little bit suspect. I'm not saying anybody in this room, but I wouldn't be surprised. I can understand it. Sometimes these things can seem a little bit suspect. Breathing is the most natural thing that a person can do. The text tells us that once the Lord God formed the man from the dust of the ground, and what does he do next? Breathed into his nostrils the breath of life, and the man became a living being. God gave humanity the gift of breathing. God himself chose to tether life to breath. And so don't let anybody make you feel that the ability to focus on your breathing in order to stabilize your life in any given moment is anything but a gift from God. If God was willing to focus on our breathing so that we could have life, then focusing on our breathing to manage life is actually a way that we honor the Creator. When you engage slow abdominal breathing, you activate your parasympathetic nervous system. And so what that means is it now shifts your body away from the fight or flight reflex. And so simultaneously, it starts to send signals to your brain to promote relaxation. It starts to bring down your heartbeat. Your heartbeat starts to slow down. It starts to reduce your blood pressure. And amongst other things that are simultaneously happening in the background, all of these things combined cause you to calm down. When you are calm, you think clearer. You can focus better. You make better decisions. You can exhibit more control, both over yourself and also over your environment. There is virtually no situation that is not enhanced by being calm. Calmness makes everything better. Have you tried having a conversation with someone who isn't calm? Someone who's got like no chill? It can be a bit exhausting. It's challenging. It's not the easiest thing to do, but when somebody is calm and settled and tranquil, it's much easier to interact with them. It's much easier to get a gauge on what's really happening with them. It's much easier to get a gauge on where they're at. More so than that, it helps you to feel calmer. It's much easier to get a gauge on, if the circumstances dictate, what their needs actually are. When somebody is panicked, it's hard to kind of understand what's happening. But when somebody is calm, it's so much easier to understand where they're at and what they need. God is someone who is never anxious. God is never in a flat. God is never stressed. He's never panicking. We sometimes, understandably, we come to God and we sometimes speak to God from starting positions of anxiousness and nervousness and restlessness and stress and worry. But if we are able to come to him seeking to mirror his calm, seeking to mirror his tranquility, mirror his peace, then now the starting point for our conversations with him is totally different. Prayer is our connection to the Almighty. And so anything that enables us to speak to God in a clearer, more focused way only strengthens the connection. It only improves and enhances our ability to have a meaningful connection with God. The calmer you are, the more ordered your thoughts are. The calmer you are, the more focused your mind becomes. The calmer you are, the better you're able to listen, the better you're able to hear and receive what it may be that God is trying to show you. Calmness helps everything. If only we had some action, some kind of strategy that enabled us to calm down and to slow down and to order our hearts and focus our minds. If only we had something that we could do really quickly in any moment that helped us get into that state. If only we had something we could do literally anytime, anywhere. If only we had something that didn't require any equipment or any resource whatsoever. If only there was something we could do regardless of our age or our phase in life. Something we could actually do right now if the circumstances demanded it, that would give us a clearer connection to the Almighty. If only. In the New Testament, specifically within the gospel narratives, there are a number of individuals who experience death. There is Jairus' daughter. There is Herod. There's John the Baptist. There's Lazarus. There's Judas. And then, of course, there's Jesus. And throughout the gospel narratives, we get different level of detail that describe the scenes when these different individuals expire. But there is one specific nuance in the description of Jesus' death that is unique to Jesus. This is Matthew's account. Then Jesus cried again with a loud voice and breathed his last. In Mark's account, then Jesus gave a loud cry and breathed his last. And then in Luke's account, then Jesus, crying with a loud voice, said, Father, into your hands I commend my spirit. Having said this, he breathed his last. Now, I think it's safe to say it's assumed that of the other individuals who died, at some point they stopped breathing. It's kind of tacitly understood. But the synoptic gospels actually make a point. They all make a point here of drawing attention to Jesus's breath, Jesus's breathing, in a way that they don't do about anybody else, in a way that they don't report on anybody else's passing or death. Just Jesus. They talk about his breath. And I understand that this could be connected to the fact that Jesus was crucified. You see, the thing that killed a person in the act of crucifixion, it wasn't the nails in the hands and the feet. That was excruciatingly painful, but that wouldn't kill you. It wasn't a sword that would pierce a person's side. They would do that after they suspected somebody was already dead. The thing that the majority of people died of during crucifixion was suffocation. You see, by diabolical design, a person's outstretched arms would be nailed at a particular angle that would make it very difficult to exhale. And so in order to breathe, a person would have to boost themselves up using their legs just to catch their breath. It's a really, really wicked construction. But once exhaustion set in for people, which it would, after hours, sometimes even days, people literally wouldn't be able to do that anymore, which would lead most victims to suffocate. And so, yes, you could infer that, well, maybe the only reason it mentions Jesus's breath is because of his method of execution. You could say that, but I think it's more than that. I want to invite you to look at what Mark says next in his particular account. Mark says this, now when the centurion who stood facing him saw that in this way he breathed his last, he said, truly, this man was God's son. This is one of the kind of texts that you read, but you don't really read. You read, but you don't really consider. You don't consider the implications of every word that's used. When you think about what the scene that Mark is describing, you would maybe have expected this text to read and to say, when he saw in this way, he cried out to his father. This made him say, well, truly this was God's son. Or maybe it expected to say, when he saw that in this way, Jesus forgave those who were persecuting him, this made him say, truly this was God's son. But it doesn't say that. It says, when the centurion saw that in this way he breathed his last, he said, truly, this man was God's son. There was something observable about the practice of this discipline that was compelling to this soldier. Something about what he saw helped him to understand Jesus' true identity, that this was God's son. Jesus, in the humble act of breathing, even in this depleted state, was able to model a means of connection to the Father that changed somebody's life. Luke's account says, then Jesus, crying with a loud voice, said, Father, into your hands I commend my spirit. Having said this, he breathed his last. Jesus prays, he breathes, and then he pays the price for sin. The power of breathing is not New Age, it's New Testament. I don't know if any of you happen to have a passing interest in entomology. Entomology is a strand of zoology. Entomology is the study of insects. If you do happen to be interested in this particular field, you may have come across the humble bombardier beetle. The bombardier beetle has a unique way of protecting itself from predators. You see, if threatened, if made to feel that its life is at risk, if made to feel that its life is under threat, it squirts jets of boiling hot acid straight in the face of enemies. And you might ask yourself, how does this little beetle internalize highly combustible acid and not just explode all over the place? It would be like if you walked around carrying sticks of lit dynamite all the time. Like, that could be a problem, right? Well, God designed a particularly elegant solution for this little creature. God designed a solution to this particular problem. Within the bombardier's little body, it has two chambers, okay? And each chamber contains a liquid. And one of those liquids is an accelerant and a trigger for the other liquid. And so when the beetle is under threat, the beetle's inner workings send those two liquids down into the aptly named explosion chamber. That's literally what it's called. It has a chamber in itself called the explosion chamber. And when triggered, it sends these two liquids down there. Guess what happens in the explosion chamber? Well, I'm sure you know. These two liquids then combine, they react, and they create a massive amount of heat, and they are then, boom, ejected into someone or something's face. This little beetle has an inner working, an inner mechanism that seems totally innocuous. But when he combines it with something potent, it becomes absolutely formidable. Some spiritual disciplines, such as breathing, it can seem totally innocuous. Something you don't even think about. You don't place any store on them. Just like the liquid that sloshes around inside the little bombardier beetle. You can walk around breathing every second of your life with no dramatic effects. But when combined with something like prayer, it becomes a spiritual accelerant. It becomes a spiritual trigger. And the combination of those two things now becomes exponentially more powerful. And so do not think that because breathing is something that you do all day, every day, that it has no power. It has the power of an accelerant. You just have to focus it and combine it with the right catalyst, breathing and prayer. Nailed to the cross, Jesus prayed what I think we can safely assume was the most urgent prayer of his entire life. Father, into your hands I commend my spirit. When every sinew in his body was telling him, give up, quit, call angels to save you, call down holy fire to burn everything, get yourself out of here. He prayed and he breathed. Pain management, self-control, calm in the storm, steely focus, slow the world down, block everything out. Father, into your hands I commend my spirit. Mission accomplished. Truly, this man was God's son. In that moment, in that place, on that cross, the only things he had the power to do were pray and breathe. And it was enough. We have those same gifts. The two things that anyone can do anywhere, anytime. Pray and breathe. As Jesus' followers were gathered around the foot of the cross on that Friday evening, the very last thing that he did in their presence was breathe. On Sunday evening, following the resurrection, the disciples were gathered together inside a locked house. It was locked for fear of the authorities and reprisal. And so the disciples were gathered together inside the locked house when Jesus somewhat enigmatically appears in their presence. This is the first time that Jesus met with them collectively post the resurrection. And so Jesus addresses them and he says to them, peace be with you. As the Father has sent me, so I send you. And do you know what he does after that? He breathes on them. That's literally what the text says. He breathes on them. On the cross, he breathed as man for calm, for relief, seeking the clearest possible connection to the Father. After the cross, he breathes as God, transferring life into his followers, transmitting his peace and his calm. A reminder that once you have heard and felt my breath, you know that I am always there with you. Just like when a child hears their father's breath in the night, you are never alone in this world. Just as in creation, my breath hovers over the face of any deep, dark waters that you happen to find yourself in. Focused breathing was still a discipline for the Savior. Breathing was still a way that God connected with man. Focused breathing should be a discipline for you and I, because breathing is still a way that man connects with God. It's the thing that you do more often than anything else. It's the thing that you do most naturally. It's the thing that you do every waking moment and every sleeping moment. It's the thing that you do day and night, 24/7, 365. It's the thing that you never stop doing. But nevertheless, in spite of that, if you are seeking the face of God, make time to breathe. Father, you breathed life into us. You gave us a way to connect with you, to be calm, to be balanced, to be focused, so we can speak to you and hear from you, so we can tune out the noise, so we can bring our heart down, and so we can commune with you in the deepest possible way. Thank you for your breath that is in our lungs. It is your breath that is in our lungs. And so when we take a moment to focus on our breathing, we are receiving the gift of life that you gave us. Please tune our hearts into your heart. Amen.
Thanks for listening to the Script Pod from Acts Church. To learn more about Acts or what's coming up, visit weareacts.co.uk or give us a follow on Instagram at weareactschurch. Don't forget to subscribe or share this message if it's been helpful. Thanks for being with us.